even saw some of you on Friday at the We Built This grand opening, which was wonderful. So we'll speak more about that. Oh, and Councilmember Scipio is joining us, so we'll wait for Councilmember Scipio. Hello, Miss Annette. Hello, Councilmember Scipio. It's wonderful.
Everybody.
It's great to see you today. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be seen.
We don't have a quorum today, but we'll still have an interesting and important meeting, and we have lots of great news to share, and I'm sure you have lots of great news to share with us. So I'm so glad you could join us.
How many people do we need as a quorum, given who's no longer with us?
I believe 4, and we were originally going to have a quorum, but Miss Sheila Williams cannot join us today.
Okay, so we have
there are 3 members here.
You got 3. So we're missing Mrs. Scales, who's driving school buses, and
Mr. Fulton.
Mr. Fulton and
Miss Beverly Williams as well.
That's okay. So it's those 3.
Yes.
Okay. Miss Carlin, have we tried to contact Mr. Fulton at all?
No, ma'am. Only in emails. I emailed. I didn't call anyone.
Yeah, try calling him. He's a senior. I'm sure he's not looking at his emails. I just think that's and Miss Williams, I'm not sure she's dealing with her mother also. So at least let's try and give them a call and see if they can come on.
I did see Miss Beverly Williams at our Dr. King celebration, and she was really happy to see us. But I think right now it's just not our day and time, and with what she has going on, she can't join us, but I think she's staying attuned to what we're doing. So I know she's at least with us in spirit.
Well, we need to have her with us more than in spirit.
Yes, we really do need to have a quorum because we have some exciting projects that we would like to officially sponsor, but we can't do that until we have a quorum. Although I believe we could still vote virtually, so we can discuss that today. So I would like to call us to order. So welcome to our February 2024 meeting. And even though we don't have a quorum, Ms. Duncan or Ms. Simon, could you please call roll for us?
I think she was on the phone talking to, trying to get Mr.
One moment, let me get the list.
Yeah.
Right. Dr. Cynthia Villa-Gomez.
Present.
Mr. Robert Dura.
Present.
Mr. William Fulton. Mr. Donald Scales. Miss Beverly Williams. Miss Sheila Williams requested an excused absence. Miss Annette Wilson.
Present, but I would like to note that I'm at the hospital with my son. So if he returns to the room, I may go off camera or I may even have to come off the call, but I'll stay on as long as I can.
Thank you, Ms. Annette. Well, since we don't have a quorum, we cannot approve our December minutes. So before we begin, I really would like to take this time first to celebrate the life of our sister who passed, Miss Betty Haynes. We lost her on January 13th, 2024. And so before we have a moment of silence, I would like to say this was such sad news that Councilmember Scipio shared with us. Miss Betty was the third of our committee members that we have lost in the last 3 years. And while she was one of the newest people to join, she was very dedicated to our project through the end. And just like Miss Penn and Miss Johnson, Miss Betty was attending our meetings and we didn't know she was sick, and she was with us on Zoom just before, a few months before. So as I noted on Friday, we've lost our own, and this is why we need to continue to really seek out and connect with all of our Black elders so that we don't lose these opportunities to hear and share and document their precious stories. So I would like to publicly just read a little bit from the very beautiful obituary that was posted by her family. Betty was known for her love of the Black arts, banking, cooking, and harvesting beautiful plants. She was affectionately known in the arts community, especially for her involvement in the National Black Theater Festival in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, primarily providing her accounting and back office services to the organization. She also had a green thumb that was unmatched. She could bring any plant to life and grow a harvest for a multitude to feast upon or simply admire. Her passion was used to lead the community garden shared by the United Metropolitan Missionary Baptist Church, or her congregation, the altar flowers, and within senior living communities. There's so much other wonderful, rich history of her life, and I know I shared the link, but I would just encourage you to go back and look at this beautiful obituary. So I would just like us now to take a moment of silence and think about Miss Betty and all that she was to us and contributed to our community. Thank you, everyone. So I will move on now to my report. I will try to be brief, but share a few interesting items, but I would like to have as much time as possible for Dr. Smith to share wonderful updates on the progress with the new Mapping Prejudice project. So we had an exciting, I think, historical moment on Friday in Union Station. We had the grand opening of the We Built This, African American Black architects and buildings and builders, this wonderful exhibition. And it could have never happened without the wonderful planning efforts and creativity and really collaboration between AAHI, particularly with the work of Miss Annette Wilson and Miss Sheila Williams, as well as Miss Erica Simon from our HR and DEI office. And we all came together because Councilperson Scipio and Miss Wanda Allen Abraha had seen the exhibit at Preservation, North Carolina, got really excited about it over a year ago now, and worked with Heather and Michelle from the Historic Resources Commission. So I'm just so happy we could all work together. And the staff was there for us on Friday. And it was just so exciting to really see, as Ms. Evelyn Terry said, a mosaic of our community coming together. But without all of your efforts, it just wouldn't have happened. I would like to say our students were so excited. They got to see the exhibit on Thursday and get a special tour, but they also helped to set up, which was great. We wanted them to have that experience of what it's like to set up a public history exhibition. And some of them served as sort of the ushers and greeters the whole day. And it was life-changing for them, particularly for Miss Annie Gibbs and Mr. Glenn Hurd, who are political science, public policy, and history majors. And so they were just so excited. They took pictures with the mayor, and Miss Terry in particular really took a great interest in them and asked them if they would help her catalog her documents and her history. I know she usually is asked about her grandfather, but she has such a rich history, and she spent so much time with us after her wonderful talk. And so we're excited, and of course that work will be aligned to AAHI, and I'll keep you posted on that. I want to also acknowledge Miss Wilson was there, and Mr. Dura, and of course our most lovely councilperson Scipio brought warm greetings, along with Provost Kathy Stitz. Another nice update, Mr. Tom Flynn isn't with us today, but Provost Stitz caught Tom at the very end, and she was so excited, and she would actually like to have, beyond the March 2nd Community Day, where our students will share their projects, she'd like to have something on our campus. And so we're starting to think about bringing the 2 licensed African-American architects in to speak, as well as maybe Michelle and Heather. And so want to make sure that I involve all of you in that sort of Winston-Salem State Community Day, because we would like to get as many of our students and faculty and staff engaged in this project as one of our anchors, you know, to really collect stories and documents for our website. So I'll keep you posted on all of that and let you know. So Mr. Tom Flynn and I will be planning that with the Provost's office and our department. And we still haven't let Michelle and Heather know, but that's really, really exciting. And Provost Stitz said we need to be doing more of these kind of collaborative, wonderful events. So it was really one of the best days of my life, and I think the students as well. Moving on, just want to let you all know that the oral history class is going very well, and we will be meeting throughout the semester on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12:30 to 1:45. Mr. Flynn is joining and helping me teach the class as much as possible. And all of you are always invited, so I can share the class Zoom link. We are going to have our first visitor on Thursday, and that will be Miss Linda Dark. She'll be coming in and just meeting the students, and because she's one of our great oral historians, along with Councilperson Scipio, she's going to be sharing not only her own memories of growing up in Winston-Salem, but also best practices for oral history collection. So if you would like, I know Mr. Durant will come in at some point, and Miss Annette Wilson would like to come in. And so everybody's, of course, invited. And the good, really great news is that if we're on Zoom, we can record it. Or if we bring people to campus, we can go to our archive and Mr. Flynn can record, and then he can quite easily put the oral recordings as well as the transcripts up on our website in digital North Carolina. So we're really eager to move our oral history project along on behalf of AAHI. So please come and join us. So that's what I have to share. And now I would invite Dr. Russ Smith to talk to us about mapping prejudice.
Thanks, Dr. Villagomez. Hope everyone's doing well this afternoon. You can call me Russ. Keep it if you have any questions throughout. Good to see you, Council Members Scipio and the rest of the group here. Yes, I think Dr. Villagomez has shared with you in the past, the Spatial Justice Studio, in collaboration with, I think we're up to 20 different local community organizations, is sponsoring the Mapping Prejudice in Forsyth County project. And this project is an examination of deeds and other documents that are housed within the Register of Deeds to determine where racial covenants and deed restrictions had been utilized to basically prevent wealth accumulation and home ownership for minority populations in Forsyth County, mostly from 1900 to about 1950. Federal law and some Supreme Courses in the late 50s and 60s banned them totally, but we expect to see in the 20s, 30s, 40s, their use pretty prevalent in Winston-Salem and maybe potentially in some of the county. And so this project is looking to analyze, as I mentioned, all deeds from a period of 1900 to 1970. And you might ask how that's done. Well, we're building our work off of what was completed at the University of Minnesota in their original Mapping Prejudice project that started about 5-6 years ago. And as part of that project, they created something called the Deed Machine. And that Deed Machine is basically a data analytics tool in which you feed all the scanned records that the Register of Deeds has, and it will look for key terms, images that would potentially show that a property had a deed restriction or a racial covenant on it. So, for example, you might have a property that gets flagged or identified by the Deed Machine that says this property cannot be inhabited by anyone that is not of the Caucasian race. That was common language used during this period, and clearly that is one of the things we're looking for. Likewise, a deed might get flagged because it says it was on Black Street, and it was, and the program was taught to learn, if you see the word black, to flag it. Just because a property is located on a street with that name doesn't mean that it has a deed restriction or covenant on it, and that might be excluded from our data set. So this process is going to take several months. I'm happy to report that we've had preliminary conversations, and currently a contract is at the Register of Deeds in Forsyth County. We are expecting that to be signed, which would then give us access to all of the data that we need to feed it into that deed machine. That will take some time, a couple months. At the conclusion of that, we will have thousands of pages of documents that have been identified that are potential restrictive covenants and deed restrictions. And at that point is where the community work begins. Once we have whittled down from all the documents to the ones that are potential, we're going to be utilizing a crowdsourcing platform to engage the local community, churches, schools, nonprofits, neighborhoods, businesses, anybody that's interested in helping with this, to actually look through and answer questions about each deed that was identified to determine whether or not it meets the characteristics that we're looking for. Upon that, then those that are identified as successfully exhibiting those characteristics will be mapped. And so this effort is a combined community effort in which we are seeking to engage broad community support to identify these past historical spatial injustices that were promulgated around not just Winston-Salem, but around the country, but specifically look at what we have to deal with in our own community to then build a conversation around reparative and restorative justice. You know, I'd like to share my screen just for a second, if I can. Hopefully it'll let me. The Mapping Prejudice website from the University of Minnesota, and we're in the process of building our own, provides a great background if this hasn't been shared with you. But I wanted to go down and talk about some of the issues of how they're impacting us today, because one of the big questions I have is I don't want this to be just a historical activity in which we map what happened 60, 70, 80 years ago. This needs to be something that is with us today. So today, we know the impacts of these covenants around the country include persistent residential segregation patterns, property value discrepancies, home ownership gaps, wealth gaps, housing insecurity issues, access to green amenities, the nicer parts of the communities, and even health disparities. So those are all things that are current manifestations left over from this period of residential segregation that was completed through the use of deed restrictions and racial covenants. Why I'm speaking to you today is because I would love for this group to endorse this project, become a partner on the project, and help us when we need it to solicit support from the community for those volunteer hours. This project, I'm estimating, is going to take 2 to 3 years to complete. And we use the January 1, 2024 kickoff date to begin our meetings. In terms of our partners, we've got everybody from City County Planning to Map for Scythe to United Way to Neighbors for Better Neighborhoods to UNCSA to Wake Forest Law, WSSU's History, Politics, and Social Justice Department, the Spatial Justice Studio, lots of individual Historic Resource Commission. So yeah, we've got governmental, educational, and community support, and we're looking to gain more and more support because this is a heavy volunteer-based project. This isn't just an academic project in which Dr. Gomez and Bill Gomez and myself can sit in a room with a couple students and crank this out. I mean, the thousands of documents that will have to be looked at need to be done. So what we're anticipating doing is actually hosting lunches, hosting dinners where people will have us. And if we get a room of 20, 25 individuals, putting them to work for an hour, feeding them and saying, hey, can you look at these documents with us for an hour and let's see how many we can get done. Can we get 50 done? Can we get 100 done? And slowly go through it. I see there's a question from Councilmember Scipio. Can I help you? Yes.
Very interesting project. And I think oftentimes we think about the injustice of redlining, and we do know it impacted specific areas of the city. But deed restrictions probably are found on the other part of town where it says for whites only. And you may not know this, but Tanglewood Estate was left for the use of Forsyth County residents, whites only. And that was in a deed. It was in a will. It was in Will Reynolds's will. And they had to go to court to actually have the will broken because our federal laws had changed. So my question is, as they go through the deeds, are they looking at things like restricted for whites only, as opposed to for blacks only?
100. So yeah, appreciate that. And you're right on. I did read that history about Tanglewood. I was a little bit familiar with it, which is really kind of mind blowing. In 1968, with the Fair Housing Act, that got rid of where these could be enforceable deed restrictions and racial covenants. Yeah, the machine is programmed to look for things that say white only, but also that are against African Americans, Blacks, Hispanics, any of those keywords, because in different parts of the country they were used. So it depends. And it was interesting when we met with the Register of Deeds, she brought some of her staff and they gave me a folder and said, "Are you looking for these?" And they had, in anticipation of the meeting, brought me several copies of ones that are sprinkled around the city where there was different language. And again, some of them are explicit in terms of whites only. Some are the exact opposite. You know, not African Americans can't live here. Most of them say unless they're living on premises as a domestic servant, which is interesting in terms of that dynamic to it as well. So yeah, that language will be collected. The location of the properties will be collected. They'll be mapped, the dates when it was put into place. And so we're going to be creating, I'm a geographer, and so I like the map element. But for me, this exercise and why we want to get such broad community support is because I want to build on the redlining exhibit that we were all part of, okay? And say, yeah, after redlining, this came next. This was the next way of segregating communities. This was the private sector's way of segregating properties and keeping people in certain neighborhoods or out of certain neighborhoods. So we can have a conversation. And a couple things that I'm hoping to do, and I've had preliminary conversations with a couple foundations locally, is can we create some type of fund and target specific neighborhoods to attack some of those things I just said, like home ownership gaps? You know, how can we get people that that didn't have opportunities to maybe buy in neighborhoods that they want to live? How can we get them in certain neighborhoods today opportunities to begin to build that wealth, to tackle issues of affordability, of health discrepancies? And I mean, maybe I'm a complete optimist, but I don't want this just to be a historic activity to say, oh, look what happened. I want to have people talking about how do we restore, how do we repair moving forward, and can we set aside monies? Can we set aside opportunity?
I think that would be my biggest concern is what are the outcomes we really want to have after going through this exercise? What is it that we really want our community to be by having the knowledge? And all things may not be repairable.
100%, 100%. Yeah.
And people today, we want to go to diverse neighborhoods, not segregated neighborhoods. And I think, how do we get to the place we want for our communities to be? Because sometimes that damage has been done to people's mentality on how they think about other people. So I think I would hope that there's more discussion about before we find out what we find, what is it we want to really come out with, and how do you serve that up to the community so that it's like taking bad medicine with a spoonful of sugar. What's the sugar we need to put in there to get to where we really want to be? I'm just concerned that the state of America is so many fractions now that something noble called reparative justice is very noble, but it's not something people will embrace, considering there are people who still believe that the former election was a fraud. So I think we have to think more about what are the outcomes we really want. And because I think that's very important to understand how our psychic has been shaped in America. It's not a new psychic. It's been a continuous psyche since 1619, how we shaped people's perceptions of each other. And I would also say this, Dr. Smith, is that most of the owners of property in the East Ward are no longer owners. It's been appropriated by investors who really don't care about the people who live in those properties. And that's our biggest challenge, is to figure out, can we restore hope within people? So I think that's another story. But let's just have more discussion on the outcomes that we expect, because if you don't go in with the right attitude, you're going to come out with things you don't expect.
So yeah, I think that's great, well said, and I'm take that to heart. I would say I anticipate parallel to this project of doing the work of having these discussions, and that's why the Spatial Justice Studio is just the facilitator to get to with the relationship with Minnesota and with the data, and someone has to take the ball and start. But my goal is that this is a community project in which we get private, public, nonprofit people having conversations about all the things you were just talking about. One of I think the biggest misgivings we have, and I'm going to say I'm jaded from my geographic background and perception, is that we talk about wanting economic justice and social justice and racial justice. You can't have those without spatial justice. Until we start thinking about what it means, where people go home to every night, and what that neighborhood is like, and what school those kids have to go to, and where they have to go to the grocery store, you are not going to achieve any of those other justices. And so what I will tell you is, in the 6 years the studio has been around, I have probably given over 100 presentations. And sometimes I walk in and people I know right away want to hear what I'm saying. And other times I've been giving it to a Rotary Club in Clemens, and half the people there don't believe a word I'm saying and say there was no such thing as redlining, and that the federal government didn't do this, and they, and so you can't, I don't want to worry about getting everybody on the same side. I want to say this happened, we cataloged it, we're having a community conversation. For those people that want to make Winston-Salem a better place for everyone for sustainable purposes, we need to have some actions. And I want the community to dictate those. I don't want an academic to say, this is the way to fix it, I know the answer, because I don't. I mean, I think we need to think about, well, are there programs that promotes home ownership, promotes affordability? How do we include more mixed housing types in neighborhoods so that you can have a more integrated, diverse neighborhood setting? If you build neighborhoods that are all $500,000 3-story brick homes, I know who's going to be living in them, because in the United States, race and income are correlated, predominantly white people. I mean, that's just the way that the dynamic is. So those are the conversations that we need to have. I neglected to mention Muse is part of this, and they want to collect the stories of people who maybe remember they're wanting to buy a property in one of these areas and being told they couldn't. So it's an ongoing long-term project, which we would love support from this organization. If the city had any interest in supporting financially, because there are going to be student volunteers working on it, it's always nice to be able to pay for some interns and to try to bring some money to the table to host lunches or dinners. I have outreach to several groups, and we're collecting money that way. The Spatial Justice Studio is putting money into it itself from projects that we've had funded. So I'm open to any and all of that, and welcome conversation and dialogue and recommendations.
Thank you, Russ.
Bobby, Mr. Dorer has his hand up. Raise your hand, Robert. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
I think sometimes you can do it for them.
Usually there we go. All right, here I am.
We hear you.
Good afternoon.
Okay, great. I have a question for you, Dr. Smith.
Yes.
Is there a reviewable literature that lays out ways to research these data in order to uncover the practices of shielding properties from racial diversity in terms of ownership?
For today, do you mean, or historically?
Well, in general, if we were to undertake to do some research, what kinds of literature would we be reviewing to ground the research in extant knowledge? Sure.
Yeah, there is, and there's an article I can share that comes out of the project in Minnesota that specifically speaks to this. And I think Dr. Villagomez, I think at the very beginning, you pulled some different literature that you shared with me that we might be able to share with the group as well that talks about it. I mean, it's connected to and when you want to talk about the history of how this came to be, cities started with racialized zoning ordinances, right? The city was responsible for segregating people. Then when that was ruled unconstitutional, we start to see deed restrictions and racialized covenants. The government left open, the courts left open the opportunity for the private sector to fill that vacuum, and they did. They said, okay, well, we'll just regulate who can live where. through these things that I'm talking about. And then the federal government comes in and reinforces it with redlining, and then eventually with urban renewal. So there's this history that kind of strings from the 1900 to the 1960s and 70s that is all about racialized residential segregation techniques. And so there's a very broad literature that we can talk to. And I'd recommend, and I can put in the chat, visiting that Mapping Prejudice website that Minnesota has, because it does provide a lot of resources and background as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I will make sure I send an email to the whole committee and everyone on this call. I can include some of the appropriate peer-reviewed scholarship that Dr. Smith just mentioned. But I've been working with him from almost the beginning, and we have a few interns, one from Winston-Salem State and one from Wake Forest right now, and Mr. Flynn is helping. We're developing some marketing material. And so we had our first meeting earlier today, and afterwards I spent some time looking very specifically for the kinds of things that Councilmember Scipio said. So for example, I found something that the University of Washington did for Seattle, and they had one webpage dedicated to the actual positive outcomes of changing laws related to segregation in Seattle. But we also, sometimes it's county planning groups, sometimes it's a university, but all over the country, either very specific mapping prejudice projects have been developed, are in the process of being developed and launched, that are going to be using, being in partnership with Minnesota. And then there are others that are similar. And so there are handbooks for engaging the community. But I think what I wanted to stress, because of your concern for this being possibly divisive, is that what I've seen is that sometimes the people who are there's a diversity ethnically and racially of people who are sort of initiating and partnering on these projects. And so it's really bringing people from diverse backgrounds together. One place had the Boys and Girls Club, for example. And so I think it is bringing sort of community together, real partnerships. So I think we have some good models out there for how other communities have used this to create that kind of unity that you want to protect, Councilperson Scipio. And I appreciate all the comments that you made.
I'll just end by saying Dr. Villagomez knows how to reach me. You can also just Google Spatial Justice Studio. I'm happy to come back and speak to the group again, but I would, again, we would love your endorsement of the project and your interest in helping it come to fruition. I mean, well, we're doing it. It's going to happen, and we'd love to have you on board in any capacity you see fit. And I see another question, I think. I don't.
Yes, Miss Annette Wilson, I believe, has her hand up. Are you with us, Annette?
I'm interested in the part where there may be opportunity. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm interested in the part where there may be opportunities for groups to help and review the documents, because I would just like to see them be a part of that myself. So when that opportunity comes, whether we get to do it as a board or what have you, I would be interested in doing that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. What part of the website when we roll it out will be a volunteer collection kind of intake sheet where people can say my church group wants to do it, a school class, organization, any committees. So we're going to collect that. The other thing I'd share that just today got finalized is Leadership Winston-Salem hosts these, I think they're monthly lunch series, Zoom meetings, and they have about 100 people that show up, and I've been invited to talk about the project to gather financial support, volunteer support from those group of people that pop in on those. So we're building something bit by bit. I know what part of the outcome is going to be, but I don't know in terms of the outcome where it's going to go for the community, right? I know the academic side of what I'm going to end up with. The community side is to be determined, and I think that's exciting because I think the more community we have involved, the more potential for change and acknowledging the past and thinking about what were the damages done, and then what are ways today that we creatively fix things. Is it community land trusts that is it affordability gaps? Is it providing low interest loans? I mean, what can we do to tackle these in targeted communities? So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I
Thank
want
you.
to acknowledge our wonderful director. We have Miss Wanda Allen Abraha here with us. And I'm so delighted she is here with us. And of course, she actually is a trained expert, legal and historical expert on both redlining and these restrictive covenant deeds and so forth. So I know that she mentioned last year at one of our last meetings that the Human Relations Department has been dealing with these kinds of things. And so she's well aware of this, and she will be giving her director's report in a minute, but just wanted to make sure that she could also just share her thoughts right now on this new project. Wanda, I think you're muted.
Thank you, Chair Gomez. Yes,
welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hi. Yes, and so Dr. Smith and I, we go way back too. And so it's really a delight and a pleasure to hear him speak today and to learn about this project. Dr. Smith, this is right up our alley in terms of fair housing and redlining and all of the things that we do on the fair housing side of our department. And so I think that the Human Relations Commission, in addition to our staff, would be really excited to be a part of this. It's just going to be a matter of how, and you and I can talk about that, of course, offline, but definitely I am so enthused that you've taken this on. And so, but just to speak to the director's report, Chair Villa-Gomez, I don't have a report per se. I do know that, like you said earlier, Erica Simon has been quite busy working with you all, particularly with the We Built This project. And so I would happily defer to Erica if there's anything else that she would like to add, any comments, any feedback, anything at all that pertains to that. I would definitely defer to her because I don't think we have any other city departments on today to share anything.
I think she's Chair Villa-Gomez summed it up pretty well. But it has been a pleasure working on this project.
Great. Thank you, Erica. And Dr. Ronnie Christian, did you have anything you wanted to add? Ronnie, can you hear me? Say that again. Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Villa-Gomez, I think that's pretty much it. Short and sweet today.
Well, it's wonderful to see you, Wanda.
Thank you. Wonderful to see you too. Thank you.
And Happy New Year. We didn't have a chance to say Happy New Year to you. So
yes, thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining the Zoom call. I will be back in touch definitely with some materials for everyone to review on mapping prejudice, so we can be having conversations about that. I also, any updates on what is going to happen with We Built This beyond what we already know, I will make sure I share that with the whole committee. And again, if you want to come in on a Tuesday or Thursday and share your history and meet our current interns, please do. I also want to acknowledge Ms. Duncan for sending the list of the various East Ward senior groups. And so I think I will reach out and call and engage people there and see what we can do. But I would also encourage all of our committee members to consider making contacts, maybe attending monthly meetings. And so I'm not sure who compiled that list, but whoever did, thank you very much for sharing that with us earlier today. It's a very useful list, and we really need to connect with our elders. So,
Dr. Villa-Gomez.
Yes, ma'am.
That came from my office, because these are the groups that I tend to work with, the seniors, and I had told them that your group might come in and do a day of oral interviews with them. And so that's why.
Thank you so much. I see two hands. I see Miss Wilson's hand is up and Dr. Smith. Miss Annette, are you there?
Yes, I know that I provided names and addresses to be sent out as invitations to the event that we had this past Friday. But I'm wondering if there's another opportunity for us as members of this committee to invite others or get that card that they use, because it's a wonderful exhibit. And I'm just wondering, I know that I've seen a lot of things on different web pages or blogs or what have you, but I know I haven't watched as much TV as I normally do. But is there like a public service announcement about that we built this, or are there any radio spots going out about it, or any other promotional activities? Because it would be a shame for people to miss the opportunity to see that exhibit.
I believe that the city there are two different city web pages devoted to all of the events that we've had scheduled. So I'll make sure I send those both out, the links to those. And I don't know about sending new invitations out to more people, particularly for that February 23rd Community Collection Day. That really is the day that we're hoping people will come in and be willing to either give their histories or sign up for sharing histories, as well as bringing their documents, etc. So I thank you for that. We really do need to promote this and share it, but I'll make sure I share the links as well as the invitations that HRC sent. I believe Ms. Duncan also sent us some of the material. So there's a lot out there that's official.
Chair Villa-Gomez, the city did do a press release about it. A separate press release just focused on We Built This, and then there was another press release that was for Black History Month in general, in which this was included. And also there was a communication that went out to all city employees from our city manager, Mr. Pat Pate. And he also put information in about the exhibit. And I know that I saw something, I think it was last night on Fox 8. They did a really good story on the exhibit as well.
Okay. I know I've seen it on several different websites, but I was just wondering, for instance, if we know these, the list of the senior citizens groups that we received today, if those individuals or if those groups also had access to this information or those invitations, that might be a way for us to encourage people to come. So I'll look at that list and see maybe if I can, because I do have some extra of the postcards they sent out. Maybe I can just take some by some of those centers.
Thank you. Dr. Smith?
Yeah, I know you guys are wrapping up the meeting. I just want to say two things. One, if separate from this group's work, if you have other groups that you think would like to hear this message about what we're doing, please reach out to me or Dr. Villagomez. I'm happy to go give conversations in person, virtually, share materials to broaden that base of support we're going to need for the volunteer part of the community and just to educate people. And then the other thing is I hope, and maybe I think I heard at the beginning, that the endorsement of this group would be really special for us. So if virtual vote can happen, or if at some point you have the quorum, we would love to see the AAHI formally recommend, and kind of support this project. And so we if I can do anything to make that happen, let me know as well. I'm here to be of service. So thank you for the time today, and I appreciate you listening to the message, and hope we can continue working together in the future.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Smith.
Yes, thank you.
Is there anything else anyone here would like to share before we close our meeting?
Well, I guess I go back to our original concern that we all have had for over a year now, since we voted to continue our meetings virtually, but our attendance has not changed much from over the past year. So what are we going to do so that we aren't so we find ourselves in the position we're in today, that we don't have a quorum? What is our next step? Because for me, that's very frustrating, and I'm flexible. I'm willing to go to another time, but and I know that we all received a survey and everyone said this was a good time, but evidently it's not a good time. So what is our next step?
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. I think there have been so many efforts. Councilperson Scipio, Ms. Duncan, others have reached out repeatedly, and people who don't show up apparently say this is still a good time and day. I think we might need to become more positively proactive and just try to recruit people. We have several open seats now, so we need to encourage people to apply so they can be considered to be appointed to this committee. So I think we need to be thinking strategically about various citizens who would love to be on this committee and would love to really promote our project and see us meet our mission and our goals. And so if any of us think of someone that really would fit well with our group, I think we need to, again, just try to seek out people so we can fill these open seats.
And we need to have, people need to apply right away, because it means that once it goes in, it has to go to the mayor's office, and that doesn't come up on the agenda for adoption until the first, it goes to committee, and that's the first Monday in of the second Monday of the month. It goes through committee, general government committee, and then it goes to the council the third Monday of the month. But it has to get on the list almost 2 weeks before. So we really need to have people apply quickly, and it will be, okay, the way it goes is people who apply, the mayor sends out a list to all the council members ahead of committee to see if they have issues with any of the applicants, or if they have other people they want to put in. So it's the kind of thing that doesn't happen quickly. We always have to allow, let's say, 6 weeks. So you really needed to have someone, we really needed to have people's names going to the mayor this week, no later than next week, to be included on the agenda for March. So I think we have, how many openings do we have now with the, do we have 2 or 3?
It's at least 3.
We have 3. Okay. And one of the things is that we can also, Ms. Wanda, I think we can reconsider how large this committee needs to be. I know it's easy to get it bigger, but we might need to just for mechanics reduce the size. I think it was first established to have 9 people, and that may be too many. And we might need to see if we can amend the organization rules to make it fewer, so that you can have a quorum if you have like 5.
Right. So that would mean
people.
about 7, maybe?
Well, I don't know. I think if you have 5, then you know you get 3 people, you got a quorum.
Oh, you're talking about 5. Oh, 5 total. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I think we had the 9 because we have the 9 different sort of collection
we had categories.
Yes.
Right. That we were trying to do.
So we might have
and
to
I think if we make it too small, that's going to overburden the 5 that participate.
Well,
So,
you know, the thing is that this was never to be the working body of the collection. It was that we'd have a committee, then the committee could work and get other people in the community to help do the work. The committee wasn't supposed to be the only ones doing the work, because we got organizations, we have groups that we should be bringing into this and let them help do the work of the committee, not just the few people on the committee. So we've never really reached out and encompassed the other community groups in such a way that, because the work is vast. And we just need to have more people working it in the community, and not just, you don't have to sit on the committee, you just use your resources to compile teams of folks to go out and do some of the work.
And Councilmember Scipio, I would dare say it would not be much different from what Dr. Smith described for what he is trying to do with his project, you know, in getting people to come and get together and for a prescribed amount of time and just have them to do the work. You know, give those oral histories, upload those stories, whatever it is that we have them doing on that given day with the particular focus that we have in mind, whether it's neighborhoods, churches, civic organizations, and so on. So I think it's not unlike what he has described.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to, once we get the new members, have another type of overall orientation and the charge be clearly explained as to what we should be doing.
Yeah, I think Ms. Wilson, you're the only one who's from the original organization.
Well, no, the others are Mr. Scales and Ms. Williams are part of the original group.
Okay, yes, but they've sort of, I think we're just going to have a heart-to-heart with both of those. But I know Mr. Scales still driving the school bus, so this 2 o'clock Zoom does not work for him.
Right.
That's going to always not work for him.
Yeah.
And I know that Mike Wakeford from Muse really supports AAHI, and of course the students from WSSU who've been doing the research and work for AAHI. And so besides the archive where Tom Flynn has a oral history recording area, Mike and I have spoken about using the space at Muse, and I can see where we could come together and if we do these sort of neighborhood or group mapping prejudice collections, if we were over at Muse, for instance, we could sign people up and possibly get people to share. So again, there would be sort of overlapping mutual interests, and we could accomplish more than one thing for more than one group at these community meetings. And I do think that because there are so many groups now, you know, I don't want to say we're competing, but I do think that sometimes our elders and different community groups, there's almost a fatigue for these kinds of projects. And the one thing that I keep stressing, and Tom is stressing, and I mentioned on Friday, is that this is a city sponsored program that will never go away. So there's that access that just access, and the material is not gonna, you know, get thrown out or go away. And so it's so important that we work with all the other groups, but we realize how important that this city official project is for access. But there are a lot of groups out there, and you know, so I don't want our elders to lose trust or get fatigued, because I have heard at various times, oh, I already gave my story to this group or that group,
Yes.
and then I couldn't access it. So I won't name the groups, but oh, so I gave that story and then we never heard back, and we don't know where those oral histories are. We don't know where our documents went. And with our project and with Mapping Prejudice, you know, there will be those permanent websites and the accessibility to everybody that's very inclusive and equitable.
And in fairness to Mr. Scales, maybe we should at least find out what time will work for him, because he was an original member who participated, seemed interested, and so I would hate just to ignore the fact that he was part of the original committee.
Mm-hmm.
So if he can only meet after 4:30 or 5 o'clock, is that something that we need to reconsider? I mean, I don't know from the staff perspective, from the other members of the board, but you know, when we initially started, we were meeting in the evenings. At the time I was working, so that would have been the only way I could have participated if I had not retired. So I'm just saying we need to just, I think we owe it to him to at least find out what would work for him and see if there's any flexibility on our part or whatever.
I would be, you know, very willing to move this if everyone else agrees. I will say though that I teach our senior seminar at night on Wednesdays in the spring from 6 to 9. So if we moved it, you know, beyond, if we moved it to 6 that late, I just wouldn't be able to participate.
Right, I understand, but I'm just saying, I think we should at least ask him.
Yeah, and we spoke about moving it to a different day in the evening. So like Monday evenings, I think were another time that day and time that people favored. So hopefully we can get him back, and I would just love to see us all be together. Before we do part company, I do want to note that our March meeting will be Wednesday, March 7th, if we keep it this time. And I think we still would love to move back to face-to-face, but I suspect that meeting virtually will be the best way for us to have as many members as possible. So we'll see where that goes over the next month. But again, March 7th should be our next meeting date. Any last thoughts or suggestions? All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. Take good care. And I will definitely be in touch via email with our whole group. So take good care. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.